Hello, this is Team 9's Canadian Orthodontics Practice Case Study. Today we'll be going over the background of the situation, a current flow diagram of the current situation, data of the current condition, goal and target conditions, cause analysis, proposed improvements, flow diagram of a proposed improvement, Gantt loading chart of proposed improvement, data of proposed improvements, and the follow-ups to our improvements. First, let's go over the background. Dr. J. Jason at Canadian Orthodontics Practice wants to improve patient flow and capacity. He's currently deciding between three options. One is to hire more RDAs, two is to renovate the treatment area, and three is to hire a second orthodontist. With this project, Dr. J. Jason wants to maintain a balance between efficient scheduling and utilization of RDAs and himself. For this case, we're making the assumptions that there are 6 RDAs, which maximizes the current space that is available of the current layout. And we're also assuming that the RDAs start their appointments at the same time every day, which is time 0. In our current conditions, our flow diagram first starts with checking in at the computer for the patient, and then the patient will wait to be called, and from there, an RDA will take the patient to a treatment chair, and then the next RDA will take the next patient to another treatment chair. After that, an orthodontist will determine treatment, and they will decide whether or not if they need a follow-up appointment, and if they do need one, the RDA will record on their wall. After that, the RDA will implement presented procedures. Following the procedures, the RDA will sterilize the chair and area for the next patient, and the patient will also book an appointment at the reception if needed, and that is the end of the flow diagram.
When looking at the current conditions for our capacity and our bottleneck, it is important to make a distinction between the RDAs and the orthodontists. So when we are first looking at the RDAs and their processing time, we can see that with 4 minutes of prep time, 5 minutes of waiting time with the orthodontist, 8 minutes of treatment, and 3 minutes of cleaning, that the RDAs take 20 minutes per patient. With 6 RDAs and assuming an 8-hour workday, we can calculate that the capacity of the RDAs is 144 patients per day. When looking at the orthodontists, we can see that their processing time is 5 minutes per patient. However, there's only one orthodontist, there's only one processor. And so, assuming an 8-hour workday, we can see that the capacity of the orthodontist is 96 patients a day. The orthodontist in this situation is the bottleneck because they have the lower capacity, which means that the orthodontist availability limits the overall system of performance to 96 patients per day, even when the RDAs can see 144 patients per day. And so looking at our current conditions, in the first round, we can see that the wait time for the orthodontist increases gradually as the RDAs go through their patients. And so the flow time and end time increases from 20 minutes to 45 minutes. And as we can see, the waiting time increases gradually because Jason starts with RDA 1 and then moves sequentially. And so looking at round 2, we can see that before round 2 can even start, the first patient is required to wait on the orthodontist from the previous round. And so what ends up happening is this is when you really see the bottleneck and the flow time being 10 more minutes than expected.
We have 3 different goals/target conditions that we'd like to cover with this case. First is to reduce the average wait time by 20%. Second, to increase capacity by 25%. And then third, to double productivity of the orthodontics practice.
For our cause analysis, we will start with our underlying issues, one of them being patients arriving late to their appointments, hence then delaying the following appointments for the day. Second, we have that effective capacity is too low with 1 orthodontist and 6 RDAs. We come to this conclusion using our fishbone diagram that breaks it down for us into 4 different categories. Starting with the materials, here we have our time-structured appointments and our rotation between orthodontists and RDAs. Following by equipment, here we have our 6 treatment chairs and our check-in computers. Then we have people, which would be our 1 orthodontist and our 6 RDAs. And the methods we have in place would be the patient self-check-in and our RDAs preparing patients for the orthodontist. When evaluating the different categories we have, we come to the conclusion that our processes and methods are effective, but our root cause of not hitting effective capacity would be only having 6 RDAs and 1 orthodontist.
There were 3 proposed improvements that were given in the case. The first one being hiring 2 more RDAs, the second one, renovating the treatment area, and then third, partnering with a second orthodontist. Hiring 2 more RDAs increases the RDA capacity, reduces the workload for current RDAs, and improves their job satisfaction and makes their scheduling more flexible. Secondly, renovating the treatment area increases patient satisfaction, can add technological edge and a competitive advantage, and adds enough treatment chairs in workspace for the new RDAs as well as possible orthodontics that could be added. Third, partnering with a second orthodontist increases customer base through the collaboration between the 2 orthodontists, and it also increases overall capacity of the orthodontic practice. It finally reduces the waiting times and eliminates the bottleneck that we will discuss further on.
For our proposed improvements here on this flow diagram, we see that the process is still very similar from the original flow diagram, but we're just adding that additional orthodontist. So RDA number 1 will get the first patient and take it to orthodontist number 1, and then RDA number 2 will take that second patient and take it to orthodontist number 2. They go through the same process, but here we're ensuring that the orthodontists are using their time effectively by taking those 2 patients at the same time.
For this process, we decided to implement 2 possible alternatives. The first one was hiring 1 more orthodontist. For this, we recalculated the capacities for each 6 RDAs and 2 orthodontists. However, we realized that we created a new bottleneck, and now the capacity of the orthodontist was higher than the capacity from the RDAs. That means that the overall patients that can be attended during 1 day or 1 hour would be limited to the RDA capacity. This is how it would look utilizing the Gantt chart. Since the RDAs are now the bottleneck, you can see the orthodontist finished by minute 19. However, they can't treat the next patient until minute 24 when the RDA is done with cleaning and prepping. This means that every 6 patients, the orthodontist would have to wait 5 minutes for the RDA to be ready. Even though this change does make the patient waiting time shorter, this is not the most efficient option because the orthodontist utilization rate would be lower, and we need to make an efficient use of our resources. For this reason, we decided to evaluate another option. Our next option was to hire 1 more orthodontist and 2 more RDAs. With these changes, the capacity would be exactly the same. That means that we would eliminate the bottleneck and both RDAs and orthodontists would be able to treat the same amount of patients under ideal conditions. Not only this, but after making some calculations, which we will show later, we realized that the best way to schedule appointments would be by setting the staff start time 5 minutes apart from each other. Every 2 RDAs, the start time is 5 minutes apart, instead of starting time 0 for everyone. With this, there would be no waiting time and both RDAs and orthodontists would be completely utilized. Plus, this would be even more cost efficient since they would work this exact same amount of time. Other additional benefits of starting at different times are that if a patient arrives early, they can go with the first available RDA, if any, or they can wait in the renovated waiting area. And if a patient arrives late, they have some buffer time up to 15 minutes before they need to be rescheduled. We made these calculations utilizing this chart, where the flow time would always be 20 minutes even if the start and end times are different. Compared to the last chart of the current conditions, you can see that even after the second run of patients, the wait time will continue to be 0. And flow time will also continue to be 20 minutes.
For the proposed improvements, we selected in option B, hiring 1 more orthodontist and 2 more RDAs, along with upgrading the treatment area to account for the influx of people. We see a larger resulting capacity of 192 patients per day. This is calculated using the 8 RDAs and 480 minutes or 8 hours of operating time divided by the 20 minutes on average per patient. This doubles the patients seen per hour from 12 to 24. Not only does this improvement increase capacity, but also productivity. Before, only 96 patients were able to be seen, so this is an 100% improvement. The cost of these alternatives is that there has to be one additional chair because they're able to use the consultation chair during their services as stated in the case. Another cost is the salary for both the two RDAs, which are assumed to be hourly, but with the reduction in waiting times for the RDAs and their staggered starting time for Solution B, the practice would be saving the money that they would have spent during that time. For the orthodontists, they are on salary, which is yearly, and that should be taken into account as well. Finally, for the cost, the equipment for the second orthodontist can be leased for the time being to reduce overall fixed costs. The benefit of these alternatives is that this option increases capacity, which brings more patients and more revenues overall. Also, since it is the most efficient, the cost per unit will be even less the more people that are hired. By increasing our capacity, we are therefore increasing our number of patients as well with the new customer base from the new orthodontist. This leads to an increase in revenue and overall client base for services after this combination. Also, since we are reducing the waiting time, the cost per unit will be minimized and overall increases the cost efficiency and the lower idle time with the improvement.
To follow up our proposed improvement, we want to verify our results through implementation and tracking of KPIs. These KPIs include RDA and orthodontist productivity rates, as well as patient surveys. Issues, risk, and remaining problems we are anticipating would be patient time variability, such as lateness and finishing appointments early, and the onboarding of new workers, as well as a worker burnout. Something to consider for the future is to switch to AI when it comes to scheduling appointments.